objectives for all activities that affect the local government. This includes guidance on how to make decisions on public and private land development proposals, and expenditure of public funds, availability of tax policy, tax incentives, cooperative efforts and issues of pressing concerns such as farmland preservation or the rehabilitation of older neighborhood areas. Most plans are written to provide direction for future activities over a 10 to 20 year period after plan adoption. However, plans should actually receive a considered review and possible update every 5 years. So, some of the functions are: the plan provides continuity. The plan provides continuity across time and gives successive public bodies a common framework for addressing land use issues. It is the means by which the community can balance competing private interests. An example is, John Public may want to store oil drums on his property, but Jane Citizen, his neighbor, would like to open a restaurant on her property. Planning seeks to strike a balance among the many competing demands on land by creating development patterns that are orderly and rational, provide the greatest benefits for individuals and the community as a whole, and avoid nuisance conflicts between land uses. It's a means by which a community can protect public investments. Planning is a means by which a community avoids digging up last year's new road to lay this year's new sewer pipe. Well-planned, orderly, and phased development patterns are also less expensive for a community to provide with public services than low-density scattered development. It allows communities to plan development in a way that protects valued resources. Planning can identify environmental features like wetlands, agricultural lands, woods, steep slopes, and suggest strategies for preserving those resources from destruction or degradation by inappropriate development. And it provides guidance for shaping the appearance of the community. A plan can set forth policies that foster a distinctive sense of place. It promotes economic development. It provides justification for decisions. And through public dialogue, citizens express a collective vision for the future. Subsequent decisions that are inconsistent with the plan's policies are less likely to become embroiled in public controversy. So, as you all know, we've been working on this comprehensive plan for several years now. At the beginning of 2012, well, we started in 2012, but at the beginning of this past year, I took chairmanship of the committee. And we worked many hours. We had a really great committee. Some of the committee members are here tonight, I believe. Raise your hand if you're in the room. Tom, Butler, Joe, Katrina. So, but we actually started working on it. The plan actually started being worked on in 2012, and it went nowhere. So we pushed to get it done. Then we gave it to the town board. They turned it over to the planning board to review. Unfortunately, the planning board has spent more time, I think, than they intended to on it because they want to make sure that everything is right. So I believe they had 13 meetings, Al, is that true? They were very, very thorough with what they did. And so therefore, that kind of messed up the timeline altogether as far as adopting the plan. So, I'm going to have Mike talk a little bit about the timeline, and then I'm going to have Guy talk a little bit about why we're where we're at and why we can't move forward rapidly. So, right. This is those that don't know, this is Mike Long. He's our planner, so he's been quite involved in the process.
Well, I know some of you, but not all of you, but I'll just give you a little background. So, I myself went to school for architecture, environmental design, then got a master's degree in landscape architecture and a master's degree in public administration. So I worked for the city of Auburn and Cuyahoga County for almost 28 years doing planning and economic development work. I was also involved, president of the American Planning Association for the state of New York. I also became the city administrator for the city of Poughkeepsie for 4.5 years. Then I was the city manager in Oleana for another couple of years. But my area of expertise is planning, comprehensive planning, but more in particular is more grants and trying to find capital funded projects. And so I think when this process happened, we had an initial start is 1968 is when the first comprehensive plan was done for Lansing. And it was kind of a municipal area regional plan with Ithaca, town of Ithaca, and talked about water and sewer. And those were the major issues that were driving why the area was developed and how. 1997, Jeannie Kirby's here, but the town has the right to farm law. And as we know, farming is a big part of the community here. So it's something that's going to be very well woven into the comprehensive plan. I brought several of the maps tonight. One of the maps is the 2003 land use zoning map. And for those of you who know about zoning, it kind of gives you zones where you can do things, where it can be residential use or commercial use or business or industrial use. And they're very prescribed in terms of our zoning ordinance. And it's kind of the driver as to why you do a comprehensive plan is to modify that particular map in the future. So, but 2003 is how old that map is, so it's really time to update that. 2006 was the last comprehensive plan that the town did. And unfortunately, they did a few tweaks to the map, but they didn't really change it very much at all. I think, as many of you probably know, the village of Lansing was created because the town of Lansing couldn't get its arms around plan and zoning. And so the village created itself so that it could be zoned. And the upper part of the town really wanted to remain rural and agricultural. So they wanted to try to have a separation. So that's why, as I understand it, the village of Lansing was formed back in the 70s. You had all the development happening on Route 13. You had the malls going on. You had water and sewer issues going on. So that's really at least the crux as to how they wanted to control or define where development happens. And oftentimes that's what a plan tries to do is to pinpoint where you want to see housing, where you want to see businesses, where you want to see different types of activities, parks, whatever. And then as we got into 2009, when Connie was on the board, they got an ag grant to look at an ag master plan. And at that point, and you can see in the 2003 map, it's got a big area that's called RA, which depends on who you ask. I guess the key says rural agriculture. Some people call it reckless abandonment. It's whatever you want it to be. So the ag plan was really trying to take a more detailed look at the agricultural uses in the town and trying to figure out exactly what's agriculture, what's not. Should we keep agricultural stuff in certain areas? Should we allow housing or other types of uses in those areas? And they spent many years trying to sort that out and get through it. So
8 years to be exact.
8 years. So as I go back, 2012, they created the agricultural district, which was the last ag district. It's 24% of the town area, so a quarter of the area of the town is in an agricultural district. So it's a very important part of the whole composition of the town. So, in 2012, as Connie said, Kathy Miller was the supervisor at that point. The town board created a committee that started to look at rewriting the comprehensive plan. Jonathan Cantor was the consultant that was hired to do that, and he started the process and started to get some information, looked at, oftentimes you use census data to try to figure out what's your growth patterns, how many people are moving in, how many people are moving out, what are the age of the people. They also had some other things in terms of agricultural uses and land uses. And so they got started, but probably the first piece that group tried to work on was a survey. And so with Cornell University, they did this survey throughout the community, came back, and I know Tom's worked extensively on it a lot of times, trying to update the information. But I think that helped drive some of the initial questions about where do you want to go, what do you want to be when you grow up, so to speak. And so at that point, they created certain sections of it. And as you probably know, back in April of 2014, they had a like this, a public informational meeting, just kind of going through what information they had uncovered up to that point. So, shortly thereafter, Jonathan left, and there was a little void in terms of working on a comp plan. But in October of 2014, myself and my partner, planning partner, Joe Shepard, were hired as a consultant to help shepherd this process through. So they had started the process, they had started to write some information, they had gotten some public information and feedback, but there was, at least in my estimation, there were a lot of little things we had to fill in the gaps. So we got together and started 3 major studies that we included as part of this master plan as kind of like a pieces of information that would help guide things. So we started with the transportation issues, and we had Cornell Design Connect did a study on the transportation routes, the development patterns, what we had already been approved in terms of the planning board issues, and try to figure out what the capacities on the roads are, because everybody says, oh, there's too much traffic, we can't afford any more development. We found out that really we're under 50% in terms of capacity for most of the roads, so there's a lot of accessibility to do other things. So that was the first process that we started in 2014 during the fall. In 2015, we then finished the ag plan. And again, as I said, getting the committee back together again, trying to get new information, new ideas. And the second map here became the first version of what a potential agricultural district could look like. So instead of taking the RA zone and converting all of it into ag, we tried to look at it a little bit more systematically. And there's a couple of little maps that I have here, but what we didn't use this map in terms of the final version of the adopted ag plan, but what we did was we pulled out the areas where the water district was. It goes up along 34 feet in other areas, and we kept them in the RA zone. So there was some compromise between the committee members. We finally got everybody on the same board. At that point, the town board then had some public hearings. Then the town board passed it, and then we submitted the information and got our grant money back that the town had laid out a lot of money early on for the study for that. So it was good to get that piece done. So the transportation and the ag were the first 2 pieces that we tried to focus on. The next piece was we also used form-based codes. And for those of you who know something about planning, in the old days they called it Euclidean planning. And it's basically it was grouping everything together. So you take all your housing and you put it in one spot. You take all your industries and you put them in one spot. You take all your commercial stuff and you put them along the highway, put them in one spot, so that you don't impact other uses. So there's a new concept that's come out probably 15, 20 years ago that's probably not so new now, but it's called form-based code, and it tries to get back to some of what the old urban cities were, mixed uses, where you had commercial activities on the ground floor, you would have residential things upstairs, so that you had people living and eating and working all in common areas. And so they were trying to get back to those types of things. Florida, was one of the early things. Radisson, a bunch of different planned developments were really set up towards that concept of planning. So that was another Design Connect process that Cornell did, was form-based codes. And several of the planning board members, Larry Sharpstein and others, were kind of saying, hey, how do we merge that into our new overlay district for this? So I think it's certainly a concept that we should look at. As Connie said in January of 2016, at that point, several of the members of the original comp plan committee had moved away. I think a person died. Some other things happened. So at that point, Ed became the supervisor and decided to reinvigorate the comp plan committee, get it going again, and try to get it finished. So Connie was appointed as the chair, and we started having very frequent meetings. I think we met twice a month or 3 times a month.
Twice a month, yeah.
And so we had committees, subcommittees, and full boards, and we had groups that worked on special issues. We had an economic development group, we had a housing group, we had a natural resources group, we had infrastructure, roads and planning of that nature. So,
can I just interject something here?
Sure.
The town board did not have to appoint a committee. but they felt they wanted input from the community. They could have actually just had me write the comp plan, or they could have hired someone else just to write the comp plan. So I think it's been a very open process, and I appreciate the fact that the town board decided to make it an open process, because it could have been written by any consultant and just put through.
Yeah, it probably would have been a little quicker. But. So the next map that we have is what
Then
was
you find
called...
out the consultant is paid by the hour or not.
Depends. Now the third map is what was labeled a future land use map. And one of the key pieces of writing a comprehensive plan is to try to look at your chart of development. Where do you want to see things developed? Where do you want to see things protected? Where do you want to see businesses happen or not? Where do you want to see more residential or not? And so this was the first version, and I think the committee, you know, I know Ruth is here and others, we probably went through this map at least 10 times, and it's been changed 1,000 different little things, tweaks here and there, over that course of the year and a half. And as that point is what was said. We then had the ag protection plan. So, as I mentioned, we had the public hearings, and that was all weaved into this process. So then, on September 21st of 2016, the Comprehensive Plan Committee finished their report with their final edits, and that was then sent on to the town board for their consideration. At that point, I think the town board said, the planning board is very involved with the implementation of all of the ideas that are contained in here. That they're the stewards of the development of Lansing over time. As projects come in, as developers come in, they're the ones who review the site plans for the stormwater, traffic, density, landscaping, signage, lighting, all of the issues that create a neighborhood and where your problems become. So I think, and rightly so, the town board decided as a whole to have the planning board take a look at the comp plan. So again, you know, the committee had done extensive work, research, and maybe this is an editorial comment, but you know, when you've got 40 people involved in a project, everybody's got a little change, and everybody wants to amend something. And so each time another set of eyes look at things, they look at things a little differently. They may have a different writing style. They may want to emphasize something differently. So it's become a process. Unfortunately, it just takes the time to go through it. So the town board then referred it to the planning board, as Connie said. They had 13 meetings, you know, that they basically went through it and tried to synthesize the importance of the things that are contained in the original document. I had, I don't know, 40 maps in here, and they said, well, maybe we'll only need 30. You know, so again, we try to get as much information as we can so that as you're going forward in the future, you can say that this is the level of information that helped drive that plan. And so the next piece is the planning board also spent probably 6 or 7 meetings talking about the future land use plan. And they made some tweaks to it as well. You know, maybe this should have a little bit of commercial here. And again, these are things that the planning board had been talking about for the last 4 or 5 years. And so they're just trying to synthesize some of the thoughts that they have already had about trying to incorporate into the process. So I think we'll let Guy talk a little bit about the process, but we want to make sure that we weave certain things into the comprehensive plan. One thing that we talked about was to do a streetscape plan that would go through 34, 34B, and North Trip Hammer to have a comprehensive study done on the traffic patterns and the routes. And I know Al talked about a project that the planning board was looking at on Monday night and said, oh, should we have turn lanes and things like that? We don't have any turn lanes at Rose Harbor or North Trip Hammer. You know, maybe we should. So it's probably an appropriate time to take a look at the traffic patterns. Hopefully, we can do a design concept that will incorporate walkways, pathways, lighting, street trees, and what they call a complete streets design is what they call it today. So that's one of the major components that we wanted to build into the comprehensive plan that said that the community is interested in this type of development. So we want to go after the grant money to actually put that in place. We also, the town board has just recently completed an adoption of a master plan for Myers Park. And with that, we were able to then turn around and submit a grant application through the consolidated funding application through the state of New York. So in my mind, I'm always trying to think of ways that we can go out and find some capital money to try to build some of the things that most people want to see happen. So we're hopeful that in December we'll hear something about that, but that is one of those components that we try to build into it. Another piece. Hal?
Can you talk about the maps and they're just a guideline, not, can you
Okay,
say
yes,
that?
we'll talk about that too. The other piece that we tried to build into this is water and sewer and infrastructure. You know, we wanted to try to concentrate all the developments south of Peruville. I think that's the Mason-Dixon line, right? Everybody says, if you're in the north, you know, keep it rural. If you're southern, then you want to think about how you can affect density. You know, again, we've got the issues of the power plant, the assessment, tax base, things like that. And as you probably know, Village Solar, Village Circle is doing a great job in building a new development project right just north of the village. And it's been a huge asset to the town. It's helped us out a lot in our tax base. So we're trying to figure out where we can appropriately grow with water and sewer and transportation needs. But I think what Al was trying to get me to talk a little bit about, these are our concepts about where things will go. And the first step in the process is that, as Guy has pointed out to us, because of the time difference between when the comprehensive plan first adopted a version, sent it to the town board, there were so many meetings and time, and with the level of change, that we need to have another, planning board has to have a public hearing in the process. Then we'll go to the town board, and the town board will have an official public hearing as well. So we'll have lots more discussion about this. But the idea of these concepts are that after the comprehensive plan is adopted by the town board, and it goes through the secret process and all the other stops in the process, not stops, but steps in the process, we're then going to have to take the 2003 map and try to update it to match with what's in the comprehensive plan. So again, that'll be something that I'm assuming that the planning board will have an ultimate recommendation to the town board. And then the town board will probably spend, we're going to take bets, is it 6 months or 6 years, to update the next version of the land use ordinance and what can be done there. So I think, you know, again, as Connie has said over and over and over again, it's a process. You know, it's not in black and white. It's trying to talk about concepts and about what's important to the majority of the people of the town. Trying to get those points across so that as we look for a 5-year capital plan, you know, the town, where do they want to invest their money? Do they want new bathrooms down at Myers Park? They want a new town highway garage? They want a new village town hall? They want a new library? What kinds of things do people want to see short term, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And it's really trying to get a vision for what's going on. So I think I'll stop at this point, but I think at least what I thought tonight was to give the community a little update as to where we are in the process, to talk a little bit again about the process. Again, a lot of you have not been to some of the earlier meetings that we've had, so I think it's a good opportunity to get some more input. Again, I brought a couple copies. I wasn't sure if you'd have 5 people or 500 people show up. So I brought some copies of the comprehensive plan that the planning board has finished at that point. It's available online. So if there's anything you want to see, there's a copy at the library. There's copies in town hall. And hopefully if you've got some other input that you'd like to put in the process, we're certainly welcome any of that information.
Another thing about input, there's a very active ag committee now in the town, and they have also been, there's a subcommittee that has been looking at the land use ordinance, and they are kind of chiming in on some things that they would like to see too, to protect the agricultural land. So there's lots of ideas out there, and I've said this before, and I don't know how to stress it, but the comprehensive plan is not a law. It's a guide of where our town wants to go. It's not a law. And it can be updated periodically, and it should be updated every so many years. But there's a lot of people who's put a lot of work into this, and so hopefully we're on the right track. Guy is going to, Guy's the one who put the brakes on, so I'm going to let him explain what the next process is, and we really do love you, Guy, but.
It's okay, I wasn't actually where I was going to say anything tonight, so I'll be playing from memory. No, it's back. A couple of things about comprehensive plans. One is, some people are sadly under the impression that this is a comprehensive plan once it's adopted. But it is only one of the pieces of what they consider a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is more than a document. It changes, it grows. There's many things that are part of the comprehensive planning scheme of the town. Floodplain planning is part of the comprehensive plan, even though it may not appear in there. So a lot of the local laws and the policies, and would you say that a strong recreation and public parks are part of the overall plan of the town? I would say yes, but not all of the details concerning what are our parks and what are our recreation programs are going to be contained in this document. So a comprehensive plan is more than just that one document. But that one document is sort of the foundation of the structure. And even if there are towns that don't even have that, they still have comprehensive plans. Of course, we'll find them where they need to. So they're very fluid documents. They're not written in stone. They're periodically updated, but they change all the time. They are non-binding. They are recognized as guidance documents, aspirational documents. So anyway, as far as adoption, there's lots of ways. The key statute governing this, if you really have insomnia, you can look up County Law Section 272-small a. And then if you really have a desire to fall asleep quickly, you can go on to one of these sort of rental law sites, McLaw, Justia. Cornell's got actually a pretty good site. You can start looking at cases and rulings on this, and you understand all the language and the technology and everything else that goes into it. You can learn a lot about what the process is. But in a nutshell, there's three basic ways that comprehensive plans are created and updated. One is the town board does it itself, and that means the only board reviewing it is the town board. The second way is that the town board refers it to a planning board. The planning board does it, makes a formal referral and recommendation. Within 90 days of that recommendation, the town board must also hold a public hearing, and then they make a decision within a reasonable period of time. The third way is to refer it to what's called a comprehensive planning committee, which can be generally just about anything. Usually it's almost always representative segments of the town. It usually contains people from all of your key boards, your key constituencies, whatever. This is a bit of a unique process because Lansing chose to do all three. And normally towns only do one, and that's part and parcel why there's this much time in it. So to the extent that this thing has been vetted to death, it has, but there's still a lot more to go, and that's why I put the brakes on it. So when the Comprehensive Planning Committee did their public hearing and made a referral, the vision was that the planning board would do a review, that the review would be relatively quick, and that within that 90-day period and prior to the turning of the 2017 calendar year, the town board would conduct its public hearing and go forward. The planning board took a much deeper and longer look at the comprehensive plan than the town board had anticipated. And the 90-day issue sort of fell into the memory. And I view that as only a good thing, because the more people that are taking a deep hard look, probably the better off the product is going to be, but that's for everyone to judge in their own eyes. And so now the planning board has spent close to a year looking at this, updating maps, updating plans, updating language, modernizing, eliminating redundancies, fixing typos, whatever they found. I didn't participate in many of the meetings. And now they have to have a public hearing and they have to issue a referral. So the steps from here are, at some point between now and December 31st, the planning board is going to have a public hearing. And it will be a public hearing where people can come and make comments and suggestions and whatever they like or don't like about the plan. The planning board then has the option to refer it to the town board with recommendations, or to refer it to the town board after they make more changes. Once they do that order of referral to the town board will have to conduct its public hearing within 90 days. Same process occurs again. If the town board hears something at the public hearing and they go, oh man, we should have thought of that, they can go back and amend the plan. But eventually, within a reasonable period of time after that second public hearing, the one with the town board, the plan should be adopted. I've given a guideline of 2 to 3 months because you wouldn't want the comments of the public hearing, you wouldn't want the environmental review, and you wouldn't want the plan itself to age out and become stale. Even if it doesn't become stale, it can have the look and feel of being old, and it can drop from people's memories. And that's why the law has these timelines in it, so that everybody's sort of aware of all this is going to happen within a 180-day window once the study period and drafting period is done. So the environmental review is also going to mix in at this time. My recommendation is probably to have a joint hearing on the environmental impact of the comprehensive plan as well as on the plan itself. For those of you that know seeker, it's a remarkably interesting, often self-contradictory body of law. But I've done most of the, technically we're not completely reordering or creating any major new priorities with this particular plan. So technically it's not a type 1 action, which is the highest level of preliminary review. But I recommended and proceeded with a type 1 action because it takes the deepest, hardest look at all the potential environmental impacts. Some impacts are not going to arise. The adoption of the comprehensive plan in and of itself is not going to trigger any regulated emission source for air pollution or diesel emissions. I think we can probably all agree on that. Some may not, but that's life. The answer is going to be it doesn't impact that. But certainly the plan can impact things, other things like traffic, density, many of the site planning issues that Mike touched on, which is part and parcel of why the planning board was referred the plan and why I think it was a good thing we took that deep a look at it. So I think right now I have about 25 or 30 different maps to accompany the full environmental assessment form, part 1. There are a lot of resources on the ground in this town. There's some unique natural areas designated by the county. Technically they don't count under seeker, but we think they count anyway. There's scenic view sheds, and I'm glad I don't see Larry anywhere. We have a lot of wetlands in certain parts of the town. We don't have any CEAs in our town, but we have watersheds that are very close to and actually feed into a neighboring CEA, Wyckoff Swamp. There's a lot of creeks, many of them are trout streams. Obviously, there's Cayuga Lake. We have some historic places, we have some unique natural communities, we have about 10 or 12 threatened or endangered species here and there around the town. I've also taken a look at the county endangered species lists because the mapping isn't great and I want to see where the overlap is. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of data to look at just on an environmental level to support the plan, and that will also be part of what's in the public hearing. And certainly if there are environmental issues that you think the plan will drive, either for the good, such as limiting density or avoiding the loss of agricultural lands or preventing soil erosion, or for the ill, you think it's a bad idea to increase traffic on Jones Street. Those types of comments, public hearing is the exact place to make those comments. And certainly everybody should show up. The environmental assessment form will be put online once finalized so that you can look at it and make sure in your mind that it covers the bases. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with that many maps because some of them are very difficult to understand by looking at them, like the what are called the CRIS databases, the SHPO mapping on certain things. Because it's all, the map itself is interactive and you have to put data points and study. And you can't do that. So I created a PDF of the map so that people can go try to recreate the map and then play on the computer. But I don't want the 800 pounds of paper to build one road problem that is a very famous story right now in NEPA. So that's the process. Basically, I think the planning board's aiming to have their public hearing within the next 2 months. Obviously, it's public. Anybody can attend, town resident, or they can be residents of Montana. They're entitled to attend. The environmental review will start in the meantime. The town board will, at some point after the planning board's formal review, I believe have at least one more information session and then a formal public hearing on the plan and the environmental or potential environmental impacts of the plan. Most likely on a very condensed timeline, that public hearing could happen in November. I think that's a very, very tight timeline. I would think December would make more sense because it's a fair amount of paper to read through, and I think most people that are interested would want to have an opportunity to read through it. So taking it a step at a time, after 6 years, I'm not sure one more month matters, but that's not my call. That's just my recommendation. And that's it in terms of the process and the timeline. So if anyone has input, certainly they can contact Town Hall. I have a mailbox there. You can put the environmental comments or anything that we think needs to be incorporated into the seeker there. Mike and I will probably be coordinating pretty closely to cover the environmental review. And I believe the town board will be the lead agency for that environmental review because it's the only board with the authority to approve the plan. We'll also have official comments from county planning on a 239 review as well. And for a comprehensive plan, I would anticipate a number of comments. Most of them will probably be informal recommendations, but we'll want to take a good look at them because coordinating on a regional basis, including accommodating regional needs, is also part of what a comprehensive plan must by law do. So
Actually, just building on that, the 239 review, we've kept them involved in the whole process. So as the comprehensive plan committee was finishing up their version of it, they had seen that draft. They had made comments then. They'd given some preliminary comments. They'd given a second set of preliminary comments for the planning board is going through it. Now they have the final draft version of the planning board version. They're making comments on that as well. So I think we're trying to keep them involved in the process so that we don't get hit with a whole bunch of things at the end. We're trying to check them off a little bit.
And of course, the notices have to be 10 days.
The notice of public hearing is required to be issued by any board or committee conducting a public hearing on at least 10 days' notice. That's published and posted. Published means in the official newspaper, and posted means on the official signboard of the town clerk. It's right outside Town Hall. It's right in the center of Town Hall. Walk in the door to the left. That's the town clerk's official signboard. You'll see everything from town notices there to local foreclosure notices,
Bankruptcies.
yeah, all sorts of stuff.
We also put it on the town website.
Mhm.
So there's like 3 or 4 different places that are. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Levine. I'm the Lansing Town Supervisor. I was hired last year to move things forward in a positive, respectful manner, and hopefully I've done it so far. Tonight, I'd just like to touch base on a few things, and they'll be brief. And one of those is the process. One of those is transparency. I'll give you 7 numbers. 592-6542. That's my cell phone. I also have cards here which have my email address on it. Also, I'm on Facebook. I've been on Facebook for over a year. What's on your mind? What's on your mind, Lansing? That's been for the last year. What's on your mind? If you don't feel comfortable using Facebook, you can message me. You can text me. You can meet privately. I'm very good at keeping things to myself because as a pharmacist for almost 35 years, that's what you do. You understand that trust is a very important thing. So having said that, this process, as it keeps going forward, everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. And now, you know this thing would have liked to have been done in September or October. One of the things I do is I push. I push as hard as I can. And what that does is the process pushes back and says, we're going to go at this pace. And that's fine with me. And that means I pushed as hard as I could, and the process has worked as much as it can. This is not a political document. If this becomes political, in my opinion, take out the word comprehensive and put in annihilation. Because now you've driven this town farther apart. I work in the village. I go to the village meetings. I work with the mayor in the village. We're working on a sewer project. work on other projects where we share services. People in the village have asked me, what is this with a person on a tractor? What does that mean? They don't know what right to farm means because they're in a different part of town. It could be a different word or a different world. I respectfully describe that they have a right to farm, which means they have a right to transport their tractors and machinery to do their job, and it may be at a slower pace, but you have to respect the ability for them to do that as you respect the ability for anybody to earn a living. And once you explain that to them in a respectful manner, plus asking, are there any questions? Are there any questions later? Think about this, please get back to me. Doug has stopped in at the pharmacy a few times. We had some wonderful conversations, and if I can't spend more than 5 minutes, I'll say, Doug, I'll get back to you later on this. He says, fine.
No prescriptions.
No prescription. But it's about the process. It's the same thing when you look at the planning board. What they've done in a very methodical way, and to Tommy Ellis's credit, I have, first of all, I have tremendous respect for them because I probably voted for most of them to actually have that job. Except maybe Larry. I think that he's coming up again.
He's only been there 60 years.
Yeah, exactly. But having said that, he methodically went through that to use that as a teachable moment for the new people there. To tell them a bit of the history behind this and this and this and this and this about the hamlets. So it's about the process so that if Tom retires in 2 years when his term's up, there is an information base there because you want continuity. The same thing with the comprehensive plan. You want continuity. You want to nudge it, as Katrina would say, you nudge it in a certain direction as we move forward and evolve. We're a diverse community because we have farming to the north and yet we have tremendous growth to the south. I don't know if a lot of communities have that. Usually it's one wins over the other. With us, I believe in a symbiotic relationship. And to do that as we evolve, a small example would be the Myers Road project. For the old timers like myself, that road used to be 55 miles an hour, and it didn't go to the park, it went to Ladoga Park. And Giff Horton had a concrete plant where that road goes right now. That's where he has a concrete plant. That's all changed now. Now it's 25 miles an hour. And there were no shoulders. But back then, people didn't walk for exercise. They walked to get from point A to point B, as we all know. So as our town evolves, we try to evolve with it. We meet with our citizens, we try to address it in a very respectful way, and try to find reasonable, obtainable solutions. One more thing, as we methodically go through this, you'll have a chance to go through probably 2 public hearings and 1 more informational meeting at least. One of the things is that if you have questions, like the ones that were here, these 10 questions here that I was made aware of, I passed those on to the planning board. And I would hope any of your questions, you would share them with us in advance so they can thoroughly look through them, so we can thoroughly look through them and give you an answer. Why this was changed, why this was changed over here. Has pathways been mentioned? Has pathways not been mentioned? Has it been pushed to the back? Has it been pushed to the front? Things of that nature. You look at this new development that may go through, Cornerstone. They're leaving the existing paths in there. The only thing that's changing is we're going to go by a crosswalk across the road because the emphasis was on paths. Every developer that comes in there, we always stress paths. Otherwise, we would not have passed a 5-0 vote for a reserve fund, so we have money now, so we can buy land, so we can basically expand the paths. I walked with certain people the other day on the railroad bed, and I'll fight tooth and nail to actually keep that. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight. If you haven't been up there, go up there and stand on the railroad bed and look out. It's absolutely magnificent. I'll share one more thing here, not to bore you. I try to use examples, real-life application on what we're trying to do here. And one of the things is how do you apply this towards our growth, our future, through the grant process. What we've done at Myers Park, I think that's, in its own way, its own little world. It won't change much. It's pretty well evolved all it has. So we did the capital improvement project down there. We've gotten the data. We're going to have to do basically a 25% contribution from the town for this $500,000 grant. Now some people would say, well, that's a $125,000 we don't have. But the unique thing is that we have such a talented crew, that would be the in-kind donation. That would be the one that they would do the dredging, which they would do anyways. That would be the one where they do the marina and the docks and the walls, which they've done in the past. That is one where they may work on the pavilions, which they've done in the past. That may be other things that they've done down there, like build and extend the shed, done the outside showers, do the walkway to the lighthouse, and the list goes on and on. But what that does is it gives us something to defend and ask for money to improve, because it falls into what our vision is here. So this is one of the things that we do with the process. It is methodical, sometimes it is tedious, sometimes it is slower than I like to. As Katrina used to say, be the second mouse, not the first mouse, because the second mouse gets the cheese. So every once in a while we have a little code where she says second mouse, and she just tells me politely to slow down. And I respect that. So having said that, this is not a Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. As I said in the Tompkins Weekly, that's the silly season. This is serving. We're now all public servants. And every one of your questions, every one of your concerns will be listened to in a respectful manner. You may not get all that you want, and we may not agree. And in all fairness, the only person that's going to agree with you is that person waiting for you in the bathroom in the mirror. Because we're all going to have differences. But I think we can agree on certain things and move forward. Because as our board for the last 18 months, we've taken that attitude. I think we have a dynamic board because they're so diverse. I would not want everybody in the same. I've got a farmer. I've got somebody who does salt point. I have somebody who does finance. I have somebody who does infrastructure. I'm truly blessed to have so much talent. Like here, I have talent. And fortunately, I'm smart enough once in a while to let the thoroughbred run the race. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job. I look forward to where this is going in the next 3 months, 6 months, and I really look forward to the next 10 years, because I think we're in a really good spot. Even though we lost $25 million up there at the power plant, and even though we lost another $11 million this year in our in lieu of payments, we're still looking at a 0% rate increase. There's no any rate increase this year because we're building like crazy at the southern end. Because we pushed the planning board to do that. Like Lansing's told us, you've done things in 2 months that take us 2 years in any other town. And they're going to be building for 5 straight years up there, as fast as they can, in the dense area, where it should be. So I'll leave you with this. We're all in this together. And as a family, we don't agree on everything, but we agree the fact that we're in this together. And if we're not, we're in for a very long, slow death. And I'm not going to let that happen. At least I'm going to make every effort not to. So that's all I'm going to say about that tonight. Once again, if you have questions, you want to pull them to one side, or anybody else, you want to talk to them privately, call them, email them, whatever. Please feel free that you can share your concerns with them. Fair enough? Okay.
And for everybody who came in late, we have a sign-up sheet here if you'd like to give us your information so we can keep track of that. We'll hang around for a little while if you've got any specific questions you want to talk about. But I think the idea of the maps are here if you want to take a look. I brought my magnifying glass so you can see a little bit. But we want to, I guess, thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you all for taking time out of your
You're not taking questions?
Stay tuned.
All you gotta do is ask, if you got questions.
We seem to be bringing it up. Yeah, just dismiss it.